Welcome to Independence Nation on the Light of Life Network. For over 2 years, there's been a Syrian civil war going on. Today, we're going to take a look at that Syrian civil war, this Arab Spring that occurred, and Syrian uprising, and what exactly the U.S. role is in the Syria uprising. In April of 2011, the Syrian army was deployed to quell the uprising, and soldiers fired on demonstrators across the country. So it was said over the mainstream media that the Syrian army fired on protesters. Of course, I believe this was a false flag to get United Nations involved, of course, so they could deploy NATO and launch an all-out war in Syria. Now, the protests evolved into an armed rebellion. Opposition forces, mainly composed of defected soldiers and civilian volunteers, came together, what they called the Free Syrian Army. Of course, you're going to hear that term a lot as we take a look at this U.S. role in Syria. Now, it's important that we take a look at Bashar al-Assad and who he is. Bashar al-Assad is the president of Syria and regional secretary of the Syrian-led branch of the Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party. We're going to take a look at the Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party as well here, a little more in depth. Reading forward, he has served as president since 2000 when he succeeded his father, who had ruled Syria for 30 years prior to his death. So this is important because Bashar al-Assad was elected in 2000. We have a conflict here because we see that the U.S. is trying to oust Assad, trying to overturn Assad in Syria, saying that he's a dictator, but he was elected by the people, and we're going to take a look at that further. But the thing about it is Mohammed Morsi, they said, needs to be back in power because he was democratically elected, and therefore he being a dictator should be back in power. But that Assad needs to be overturned, that he's a dictator and he needs to be overturned. But Assad was elected by the people of Syria. Now, let's take a look into the Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party. It was first the regional branch of the original Ba'ath Party before it changed its allegiance to the Syrian-led Ba'ath movement following the 1966 split within the original Ba'ath Party. So in 1966, you had this original Ba'ath Party and this faction, the Socialist Ba'ath Party, that came out of it. The party has ruled Syria continuously since the 1963 Syrian coup, which brought the Ba'athists to power. The Ba'ath Party functions as Syria's dominant party. And this is important because, as I said earlier, Bashar al-Assad is an Alawite. And Alawites are a Shia sect. And Alawites only represent, Alawites represent only 12% of the Syrian population. This is important. As I said, Assad was elected by his people. Assad is officially part of the minority in Syria, yet the people elected him into power. As I said, Alawites represent only 12% of the Syrian population. So what do we see coming about here, this Arab Spring, this Syrian uprising? What we see is this Shia versus Sunni Muslim situation going on. So you have, as I said about Mohammed Morsi, he, as we've seen in Egypt, Libya, other places, as we're seeing in Syria, that there is wanting to replace Shia with Sunni Muslims, as Mohammed Morsi is of the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Muslim Brotherhood is Sunni. Now, when I first started investigating this civil war in Syria, there was a lot of mainstream media talking points out there that U.S. was not on the grounds in Syria, and that basically we were staying out of it, but we were supporting the people in word, that the people needed to be free and we wanted to support them democratically. But that turned out to be false. As I went on several news sites outside the U.S., it showed that we had CIA on the grounds there in Syria doing business with Al Qaeda and factions of Al Qaeda, and that the whole thing had been a lie. And I'm not sure why uh, the mainstream media hasn't figured out, and the White House hasn't figured out, to just tell the American public the truth. Give us the truth, and we can get behind you. But I wanted to believe that they, or CIA, had nothing to do with this Syrian uprising. That turned out to be false. So you might ask yourself, where do we get our news? Where do we get our news on the grounds in Syria that lets us know that things aren't adding up to what the mainstream media says? Well, we follow a woman who's on YouTube who calls herself Syrian Girl.
Hello everyone, this is Syrian Girl. I want to give you an update on the situation in Syria, which has escalated in the last few days. Over the last year, my country has been slowly dying. Sanctions, death squads, and sectarian forces such as Al-Qaeda have been destroying infrastructure, murdering people, and inviting invasion. Since the Hula massacre, which is now debunked as a false flag by the leading German newspaper FAZ, there have been reports that Israel has armed the insurgents with chemical weapons. It was stated by Press TV and then confirmed by DEVCA. Each of these shells in the hands of terrorists can kill 1,500 people. Sources on the ground have told me that the insurgents are also now armed with javelin and thermobaric missiles, as well as an M72 Lav tipped with depleted uranium. For this reason, the government's hand has been forced and they are now employing artillery strikes, something which the Western media have been accusing them of doing over a year without any evidence or truth behind it whatsoever. But a few days ago, the President declared the launch of Operation Corridors of Silence and gave the insurgents 24 hours to give up their arms. After much attrition and provocation, NATO, Israel, and the Gulf Arab states have succeeded in making Syria bomb itself. The areas designated for artillery have been already evacuated of civilians. However, as indiscriminate weapons go, there are bound to be casualties. Let it be known that I lay the blame squarely on those who have armed and funded this insurrection and sent foreign forces into my country to destroy us from the inside. Clinton, Rice, Bernard Henry Levy, George Soros, Joe Lieberman, the list goes on. It is you that should be under the missiles. If this escalates any further, the threat of a third world war is on our doorsteps. Thank you. Hi everyone, Syrian girl here. In the last few days, a photo emerged of the insurgents unpacking boxes of gas masks. And if you notice, some of the gas masks are in the US style M42A1 and not in the Russian style, which means that they could have only come from outside of Syria. This adds credence to the potential chemical weapons false flag event that many bloggers have been writing about. That is, that NATO plans to use chemical weapons in Syria via the insurgents and accuse the Syrian military of doing this in order to create some sort of casus belli for foreign intervention. Some time ago, the Blogspot Land Destroyer actually posted images of the insurgents donning the gas masks, and even RT reported about the potential for a chemical weapons false flag operation. In the last month, there has been a lot of news and accusation coming out of the mainstream media, claiming that Syria might use chemical weapons against its own people in a bid for the government to stay in power. In fact, just a few hours ago, at the UN General Assembly, the Israeli ambassador to the UN, Ron Prosser, demanded that the Syrian government lock down its chemical weapons and said, quote, "We should not pretend that a regime that cuts the throats of children today will not be prepared to gas them tomorrow." Again, he alludes to the notion that the Syrian government might use chemical weapons on its own people, clearly a sign that they are planning some sort of a false flag event. This is in order to create a casus belli of attack against Syria by NATO powers, in the same way that the WMDs were used in Iraq. There's also been some claims that NATO and Israel are afraid of the chemical weapons getting into the wrong hands, and hence must act in order to stop this from happening. Again, an excuse for intervention. This is also to cover up for the fact that they have given the insurgents chemical weapons in order to carry out this false flag event. The irony is, it was in fact an Israeli newspaper that reported that the Syrian insurgents were given chemical weapons by Libya only a month ago. And the mainstream media seems not too shy at all to discuss the fact that Libya is arming the Syrian insurgents, as well as being proud of bombings that the Syrian insurgents are conducting. The accusations forced the spokesman for the Syrian Foreign Ministry to come out and make a statement against them. While he didn't confirm or deny the existence of Syria's chemical weapons, because that's Syria's policy, he said if Syria did have them, they would never be used against the Syrian population and only as a deterrent for foreign attack, which is completely within Syria's rights, especially since Israel, who is just across the border, has its own nuclear weapons stockpile. We all remember the lies that were sold about Iraq's WMDs, which were never found, even though Bush looked under a table for them, in order to send US troops to Iraq to kill over 1 million Iraqis. And in fact, the same narrative was used against Libya more recently. In reality, NATO powers gave chemical weapons to the Libyan insurgents of the Zintan tribe, which were then subsequently used against the pro-Gaddafi Mashashia tribe. I truly hope that making this information available will actually prevent the false flag from happening, as I do believe that we're coming closer and closer to seeing this event actually unfold. Thank you very much.
You can see they're involved with factions of governments outside of Syria to overturn Assad and to shift power from Shia to Sunni Muslims. Now, if you need evidence of CIA doing business with Al Qaeda in Syria, we have an article concerning this. We go now to that article, and it reads as such: the CIA link to Al Qaeda in Syria. The revelation is shocking, even for the CIA, given the recent history of their modus operandi, and even after we take into consideration the way the USA and its Fucus Axis friends have behaved over the last few decades. There is a link between the Al Qaeda terrorists fighting in Syria and the USA's CIA. Worse, the link between Al Qaeda and CIA. The allegation is made by former Al Qaeda member Sheikh Nabil Naim, who has spoken out on video claiming that the principal force fighting against President Bashar al-Assad in Syria, Jabhat al-Nusra, the one with strong links to al-Qaeda, is led by a CIA operative, Mohammed al-Jalani. Now it goes on to say, in quotes, the USA has been allowing us to fight in Afghanistan for 18 years and have funded and supported us, claims Naim, who states that those duped into fighting against President al-Assad, you are fighting the war in Syria on America's behalf. Eventually you'll be called terrorists and you will be killed or put in prison, just like what happened to us after Afghanistan. And regarding Syria, he reveals that 29 different FSA fighting groups have sworn allegiance to al-Qaeda, FSA meaning Free Syrian Army. An FSA general recently confirmed that the FSA and al-Nusra are fighting together, as the West has been urging the terrorist groups to do. The CIA has been aiding other Gulf states and send arms to the Syrian rebels, contravening the terms of international law, which stipulates clearly that it is illegal to become involved in an internal conflict in a sovereign nation. He claims the FSA fighting groups are defecting to Jabhat al-Nusra, where they received promises of good money. Many rebel groups have vowed to fight against the United States of America once they have finished in Syria. They have burned American flags. They are burning Israeli flags. FSA groups sing songs glorifying al-Qaeda and acclaiming the 9/11 attacks. This is important because though there may be a U.S. endgame, there is obviously an endgame for the Free Syrian Army. They're burning American flags, they're burning Israeli flags, and they plan to turn against the U.S. after this war, just like we saw with Afghanistan years ago. Now, why don't they just tell us the truth? And this is the thing that gets me, because they should just tell the American people the truth, because I believe there is an end game for the U.S., and I'm about to go into that now. I'm going to lead up to it. Iran and Syria have had a strategic alliance ever since the Iran-Iraq war, when Syria sided with non-Arab Iran against its fellow Ba'ath-ruled neighbor but enemy Iraq, and was isolated by some Arab countries. Now, what brought these Iran and Syria together? The two countries shared a common animosity towards Saddam Hussein and coordination against U.S. and Israel. Now, since 1979, the alliance between Syria and Iran has had significant impact in shaping Middle East politics and thwarting the regional goals of the United States, Israel, and Iraq. Syria and Iran are the two parties most responsible for spoiling U.S.-backed peace efforts between Arabs and Israel in order to promote their own Arab Islamic interests. For the United States in particular, they were the most troublesome countries during U.S. intervention because they aided armed and abetted insurgents. Now, as I said earlier, Syria is predominantly Sunni Muslim. Iran is predominantly Shia, although, I mean, this Syria's ruling family is Alawite, which is a Shia sect. Therefore, you see where they come together as an ally. In conclusion, what do we see occurring here? The U.S. intends to take out Syria, which is Iran's greatest ally. Take out Syria, destroy their greatest ally, bring about regime change in Syria, and launch an all-out war against Iran. The thing that troubles me so much, and you may be asking yourself, why are you, or why does your organization cover things of this magnitude? The reason why I'm covering this is because in the Bible it speaks of what I see as World War III, where a third of man will be wiped out. And if I can do anything to stop it or even delay it, I will do it. This is Keith Pitts reporting for Independence Nation. I'm gone. I'll see you next time. Get sustainable, people. I'll see you next time.